Great day, everyone. Ed Dudley, coming from Durham, North Carolina, United States. And I don't know when this show is going to air, but it is full on sports season for me. We got my Boston Bruins in the playoffs. We got my Boston Celtics in the playoffs. We got my Boston Red Sox, not so much. And NFL draft just started. So hopefully, we'll have some fun there. As I'm talking here, you see Charmaine rolling her eyes because she could care less. Great day, Charmaine. How are you today?
I'm fabulous, Silhouette. Hello, everyone. It's great to be in your energy today.
Yeah.
So how are you doing besides soccer? Besides sports, I don't want to know about it. But how are you feeling, Mr.
I
Silhouette?
am I am feeling absolutely amazing. I always say anytime I'm above ground, I'm doing good. I'm feeling amazing because just some of the work that I'm doing outside of here, and when I can see impact on individuals' lives, and I could care less if I impact thousands of people. It doesn't matter to me. If I can impact one, that's. And I got this amazing message from someone earlier today that just I will hold that message tight all day long. So you know who you are if you're listening. I won't call you out by name. I won't embarrass you, but thank you. You made my morning, my day, and part of my weekend.
Just your intro is so special, actually. Sometimes we forget to actually recognize people for the good that they do.
Yeah.
It's so important to actually validate people
Hmm.
and express gratitude and thanks,
Yeah.
especially where we find ourselves. We're living in a very complex time, so much energy is
Yes.
going around that's creating unnecessary conflict in like internal conflict as well as
Oh
external
God,
conflict and
a
um
ton.
and it's so important for us to just be aware of that and see how we navigate that space.
Man.
And it is for that reason you and I invited this amazing woman to talk about,
Well,
and who's a
let's
conflict strategist.
let's bring her in, Miss Leslie Nydick. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us. Before we even get started, as I'm looking at the conflict strategist, I'm actually sending you a ticket to fly to North Carolina. So you come hang out in my house with me and my wife for a little while. And no, I'm just joking. I'm joking, sweetie. If you see this, I'm joking. It's a joke. But thank you for joining us today.
Leslie, welcome
Thank
to the
you.
Ubuntu House. And I couldn't think
Thank
of a
you.
nicer person to actually have us join us this Friday afternoon.
Oh,
Every engagement that we've had, even though it's been via social media, has been always kind and informative and supportive. So grateful for the energy that you put out there. So, yeah, it's good to have you. I think you can actually start. Besides giving Ed practical tips on how to deal with his wife,
Oh, women in
you
we'll
can
general.
get
actually
to that.
you can actually start by just telling us a little bit about who you are and what makes you tick.
Sure. Well, coming from New York City in the United States, and I obviously focus on conflict. What I really started in real estate. And many people who see me wonder, like, how in the world did you end up doing what you're doing now? So I managed real estate, I managed construction, I managed the space in corporate organizations where everyone had to come to me like, I need more space, I need less space. So I found myself in the middle of conflict all the time, like negotiating conflict, issues between landlords and tenants, but issues between departments and different divisions. And I just kept on seeing that there was another way. We were all, most of us were taught like negotiate, hold all the information to yourself, don't reveal things. And I found that wasn't working. So I was kind of changing it up. I would reveal a little bit, and reveal a little bit more. And I'm like, wow, this is like going well. They actually know what I want, need, and they're trying to address it. And then I was like, well, what do you really need? Rather than those positions. And that was the real shift for me, that I wanted to focus on that. So that's when I didn't feel like it was a change in career. It was more that I was just changing who I worked for, going from working as an employee to working for myself. And now I do this full time. I do a combination of things, whether I'm coaching individuals, coaching teams, or doing customized training programs. I also teach at NYU part time, and all of it is about communication.
Mm.
Those skills that we think we have, like people always say, "Oh, I know how to listen. You don't have to teach me how to listen," or how to speak or how to clarify. It's things we didn't focus on. So it's a lot of common sense, but not common practice.
Mhm.
And that's what I teach.
I love that last line. A lot of common sense, but not common practice. You know, I,
Yes.
I tease and joke about my wife a lot, because I, because we have a great relationship, but I didn't always know how to listen. I knew how to hear. Oh, I heard what you
Yes,
say, and I was always prepared with a response after you said something, and I didn't really know
exactly.
how. And I think that's something that we all should really work on, because a lot of times we listen to respond.
Mm.
Exactly. And there's like some studies behind it why that happens because there's a big range, but we talk at about 125 to 250 words a minute. We have the capacity to listen at 400 to 700 words a minute. So if you think about that, there's this huge gap of capacity, and we fill it with planning our response, thinking about what's for dinner, perhaps even thinking about a conversation we had yesterday, instead of just leaving it empty and just listen to the person in front of us. We weren't taught how to do it. It's very hard. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of intention each time. It's not this passive thing. It's really an active thing. And that thus people say you have to learn how to actively listen. It's very active.
Okay, I'm going to go into your share was quite powerful, and Ed is actually right that most of us actually just want to respond. We don't use the opportunity as effectively as we could, right? Do you have 2 or 3 practical tips that you could land, Leslie, as to how do you conscientiously actively listen? Like, is there something that you could actually share with us when
Yeah.
engaging?
Well,
Yeah.
the first thing is that planning of the response, which we all naturally are planning the response. While we're planning it, we probably missed many words or phrases. So then our response doesn't even correspond. We have to stop planning the response and get comfortable with the pause after someone's done talking. And it's hard. We have to practice it like when we're not stressed or anything, because that 3-second pause or the 5-second pause when you're just trying to think of what to say next seems like a minute or 20 minutes or an hour. And it's quick. It doesn't take a lot to figure out what to say next. It might just be, wow, I want to hear more about that. Or I have a question about what you said. Can you like summarize that or review it again? We can always even have some of these kind of prepared, I call them the open questions or open statements, just ready so that they're in our memory and they just pop out when someone's done talking so that you can hear more rather than planning this like perfect response and like as if we're in an
Gotcha.
interview for a job, you know? So
Thank you for
that's one
actually.
big one. And then, and so as part of that, I would say just focus on what the person is saying and be interested and amazed. Like people are interesting and amazing. Just listen to it. Otherwise, we miss most of it. I mean, how many times have we like finished saying what we're saying and someone asks a question and you're like, I don't even know how to answer that. What does that have to do with what we were talking about? Because they heard the beginning and that might have been a like an accurate conclusion or an idea. However, they missed the whole end, which had nothing to do at the beginning. And that's the other thing, to remember that when we're just talking, and it's not a prepared speech or something that's written down, we don't necessarily talk in order. So whatever I said first might not be the most important thing. What I said in the middle might not be most important. What I said at the end I might not even say what's most important because I'm not thinking like that. Like, oh, let me say it in order. I'll do an introductory statement, then I'll give some
Sure.
content in the middle, and then I'll summarize at the end. That's not how we talk. So that's where remember that we're not talking like we would write a book or write an article or write a memo. So that's why it's even more important to really just listen and don't draw conclusions from just those early statements. Listen to the whole thing.
And sometimes a lot is said in unspoken words. Just watching attentively, you'd be able to extract so much more than what's being said. Oh, thank you for sharing
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have to say, in your intro, while I was listening in and I was in the studio, something really impacted me. And it was what Ed said about the impact of one, because I had a similar experience over the weekend. I went to a reunion of some college friends, and there were some people I hadn't seen in a long time. And this one person pulls me over and said, I just have to tell you that your videos on LinkedIn and YouTube are just, they've just helped me so much. And I just looked at him and I go, oh my God, where have you been? Like, it, but that, but just honestly, I looked at her and I said, wow, you just like fixed me for the next 5 years. I don't care if I don't impact anyone. Just knowing now you're out there, and those are those people who would rarely say anything. Maybe if we didn't see each other over the weekend, she might have never told me. So I have to always remember there is that one, and there's probably more than the one, but one's enough.
One's enough. There's always somebody listening, and there's always someone watching. They just don't always comment. Because I had
Yes.
this, I had the same thing. I had someone send and said, "Oh, I love the content that you pushed out," and I'm like, because I don't look at the numbers. The numbers don't mean anything to me. She's like, "I love the content. Keep putting out that content." And I'm like, one, I didn't even know you were watching. One, I didn't even know we were connected. That's the first thing. And you're
Yep.
watching, so you never know the impact that you're having on someone. And a lot of times, it's the one that never says anything that you're having the most impact on.
Exactly. I love that.
That's great. So let's. I'm sure you have a lot of stories from conflict. Without revealing any names, what was one of the most challenging conflicts that you dealt with and you helped navigate entities or individuals through?
You know, I I don't know if most challenging describes them. I think they start as seemingly most challenging. And then I realize that if I just look at it as we're going to just uncover this, I'm always determined. I know that there's more to this than what they're presenting. I don't see it as challenging. I just see it as like I have to discover what's underneath what they're presenting to me. And it'll sometimes just be straightforward where I'll meet with the manager. They're ju- they're just at the end. They don't know how to manage the team. They feel like everything has fallen apart. And it'll just be like, all right, well, let's start from somewhere and talk about how do you communicate with each other? How do they communicate with you? What's happening? And in one particular case, the manager said, everyone's always coming into my office. All they want, they can't do anything by themselves. They're just constantly walking in, dumping their problems in my lap, and then I have to solve it, give it back, tell them what to do. So then when you unravel it and figure out, well, how did this start? Well, there was a day where someone walked in, had a problem. The manager didn't have time to really talk it out. So they're like, oh, this is what you should do. Step one, two, and three. And they're like, oh, okay, I'll go do that. Yep, yay, that worked. Well, they kept on doing that because that was the quick way. So now that quick way turned into a very time consuming thing because the team didn't know how to do anything by themselves. They were used to They only get directives and tasks. So I said, had you spent some time, and it might have not been a lot of time, with that first person asking them, like, well, what do you think are the options? What do you want to try? And changing that dynamic and even the mindset of just to say, I don't know either. Let's just try something." So it's mostly that thing of making it safe to make mistakes. Then people will try, and just leaving the room for people to do stuff on their own and take a stab and then get excited when they tried something and it actually worked, or not to be upset when something didn't work. They're like, oh good, now I'll just try something else, and now I know for next time that the first method isn't the best, so I'll try this one.
Mm. You
So
said,
that's, I
no,
just
go ahead.
kind of go into it always with the attitude of like, this is not going to be difficult, I just have to figure out how to uncover it.
Yeah. You said something at the beginning about people communicating. I found out some of the most difficult or challenging conflicts that I personally run into is because we have different communication styles. And if we could figure out the other person's communication style, and even figure out, a lot of us don't even know our own communication style, then we're able to get rid of those blocks and those conflicts because we can actually communicate a little better. Because it's like the love languages. If I'm busy trying to love on my wife through physical touch and hers is acts of service, it doesn't work. And it's the same thing with communication style. We need to figure out when we're working with people their communication styles.
You make up.
And not to assume what it is.
Yep.
Like, always assume that whatever my style is probably not yours. So now I can ask about it versus assuming that if, like your wife, like acts of service, that she's going to show her love through acts of service to you, but that's not necessarily working.
Right.
We assume that what works for us works for other people, and we have to just be like, let's discover, like, I don't know what works for you, let me hear that. And it's the assumptions and never stating expectations in the workplace and in personal lives. The stating expectations is the one where someone will always say to me, what do you mean they didn't know what I wanted? We do it this way all the time. I'm like, but do you ever talk about it? What do you expect? No, there's assumptions all of the time. That's the hardest one to like cut through, because people will be like, it's not an assumption. Everybody knows that. Do they? When was it communicated? How did you communicate it?
In addition, yeah, in addition to understanding communication styles, how do you, I mean, most conflicts, whether it's a personal, workplace, national, conflicts between nations and things of that sort, is this a result of a value system, principles, certain beliefs, and things of that sort, right? Um, am I making the point I'm making is the fact that from a religious perspective or from what you believe is value and what you believe that the world should be seen as, it's very diverse opposing views, and that's why we have wars and things of that sort. How do we, so the point or where I'm going with this, Leslie, I know there's workplace conflict and we are obligated largely to find ways of resolving that. From a home perspective, if family is important, then we find ways of understanding the different communication or the languages and how best we resolve that. How do we deal with the bigger social issues and worldly issues?
Hmm.
What do we, how do we break through those conflicts? Or can we? Because there's a lot of that happening right now. And I mean, if I'm not pointing fingers, but if we look at your country in terms of mass shootings, what is it that we need to do differently to deal with those kind of issues? Are people
I
having enough
mean,
space to quit? Yeah.
yeah.
Is
I,
there
I
enough
mean, I
places for people
just,
to go speak about it?
I still think it starts with like one to one, people talking to each other rather than I can't solve it with 1,000 people and 1,000 people against each other. But it's still that concept where I talked about at the beginning, what got me interested in focusing on conflict and communication is that people present a position.
Mhm.
What they really need and want is what led them to that position. But they stand there with that position and never really talk about your interests. What led you here? What was your thinking? And when you explore that, that's where the opportunity is to find out, like, well, wow, what happens if I could resolve those three interests, those two concerns? Then where are we? Oh, I guess we're okay. Um, but people are so stuck in the position they presented because that still comes down to what we were taught with negotiation. Don't reveal everything, keep it close to the vest, just say your position and get it till you die. Like, this is it. I must have that. And a lot of times that they're presenting is still not satisfying all their needs. And I've had that numbers of times where whether it be corporate or in personal lives, people will go, oh, there's no solution. There's none. You want to try it? Go ahead, mediate away. And it's still the answer most often is not only the stating expectations, but that's different because they'll say they stated their expectations. It's digging deeper to understand. I'd love to know how you got to that point that you decided, and I'll just use money, that you had to have $1 million from that person, and that's the only way to resolve it. How did you get there? What happened before? And then when you start, oh, wow. So it sounds like what's really important is you didn't get an apology 5 years ago. You weren't respected. No one listened to you 2 years ago. When you said, yeah, and the light bulb goes off. Of course, it doesn't happen that quickly. But that's a big part of it that we think those positions that we're standing on is what's going to resolve it. And it rarely does, even with these big things. I, I can't solve the shootings and other things. There's anger, there's horrible histories that usually exist. There's mental illness that also happens. So there's so many more factors at play, and it still comes down to communication, that we're rarely really communicating. In fact, when we communicate, we're we're miscommunicating most of the time because someone's hearing me differently. We don't clarify. The other person goes, yeah, 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 I get it, and they walk away. Quick to resolve, like, yes, what she said sounds good. Let's go with that. And their interpretation of what I said is different than what I think it is. And we just don't talk about it. We're in a rush.
Mm. I love it. So I want to switch a little bit. I had a chance to go to your blog, and first of all, I love your blog because
Thank
it's a
you.
bunch of bite-sized information. It's not real lengthy where I'm getting drowned in words. It's a lot of bite-sized stuff. One of the subjects you wrote on was manage your response. I
Yes.
absolutely loved that piece. And the reason why I love that piece was I found myself having to learn how to manage my responses to things that people say to me. And I'll
Yeah.
use my wife as an example because she's the closest one to me, she knows me the best. She knows how to push every single last button. And any men out there that are married, you know how that goes. She knows how to put that very last button, but she knows how to push it. And I remember early on, my response was to let you have it. And and that created conflict. Whereas now I sit back and, all right, how am I going to manage this response to make sure that there is no conflict or to make sure that I'm understanding her properly? Because a lot of times I don't understand what she's saying. Doesn't make sense to me as a man. I would say at times. So that's a great piece. If you can just talk a little bit more about managing your responses a little.
It, it's the only thing we can control. like as an individual. I can't change what you said. I can manage how I respond to it. Um, and I know that lately, whether it be outside of the workplace or in the workplace, there's anger, there's tension. And if you're angry, I don't have to respond with anger. I also have to remember anger is a reflection of what's going on with you, your feelings, something's going on. I should be curious to find out what's going on rather than feel it's an attack on me and I'm going to defend, because then we're going to just get in this conversation of, oh, remember the time you said this or that. And it's going to be this attack and defend, and then we still learn nothing and we walk away going, oh, okay, we agree to disagree. A mindset that I don't always agree with. I want to understand more. We may not have the same opinion. So that's where I have to manage my response. Like, it may be acknowledging your feelings. It may be saying, wow, I really want to know what's going on. What happened? Uh, and rather than taking it as you just shot a dagger through me, no, you're revealing that you have some feelings and I want to learn more about them. So that's where it's much more of managing the response rather than reacting.
Les, just Leslie, just from a picking up on the point or the conversation that's just being had, is it wise to just step away from the conversation at that point in time if you're not feeling your best and you don't feel like engaging, to say, I'd rather we just take a bit of a break and we'll come back to it tomorrow or later? Um, I find that helps move the conversation more productively, because sometimes at
Yes.
the end of the day, you're tired, not in the best of frame mindset, and you can be at
And
loggerheads,
and that's like
Mr. Ed Dudley.
that's the power of the pause, but the longer pause, like the sleep on it pause. And that's another one. I mean, that's why I like using that. You referred to it exactly like I think of it, the bite-sized strategies where it's doable, but sleep on it. There are so many times that we need to just sleep on it, absorb it. If I'm the one who's upset and maybe you're upset too, or only one of us is upset, just stepping away lets us both have the room to just breathe in and go, oh, wow, you know what? I'm still upset, but now I want to explain where it started and where it came from. And maybe I'm going to make a little more sense now because I've relaxed. Or maybe I'm still upset the next day saying, you know what, we gotta like attack this because I'm still upset after sleeping on it. The pause, whether whether I'm the one in the conflict or whether I'm the one helping facilitate the conversation. There are plenty of times I figure out how to take the pause, whether it be, listen, let's just take a break and go get some coffee. Let's all have a snack. Remember, I got some food delivered over here. Or there are times where I'm just taking a sip of coffee or something, and that's enough of pause. But absolutely, we don't give ourselves permission to take those breaks. We think we have to immediately say something. We immediately must resolve this. And conflict is, I think it's a mindset shift. A conflict is good. And it takes a little bit to get there. That's my like final statement. Like, conflict is, we have different ways of looking at things. Conflict is conversation. For many people, it's difficult conversation, but it's conversation. Once we start looking at it like that and taking out the negative words, conflict can just be, wow, if we didn't have conflict, there's a lot of ideas and innovation that might not have happened without different ideas. And it goes back to, inclusion, a hot topic. Why does everyone have to think the same? Do you really want everyone to think the same? We talk about it. We talk a good game. Like, yes, we want to be with people who have different ideas, who look different than me, who live in different places. And then when it comes down to like hiring people or living with people or being friends with, oh, I'm only friends with the people who
Mm.
think exactly like me. Really? That is quite boring because you wouldn't have to talk if you all think the same. There's nothing to say. So it's back to like remembering like our words and then like live those words. Like, differences are okay. Actually, they're
Sure.
interesting. I seek out the differences.
Love it.
You know, especially in boardrooms in the workplace, people prefer not to unpack conflict and tend
Hmm.
to go or not have the conversations and tend to go with the flow because it's supposedly easier. In your, it keeps the peace, it pays the salary. You can't be seen as being thinking differently or challenging and things of that sort. In your view, Leslie, I mean, you've spent a fair amount, like decades in this space, resolving conflict. What are the negative impact, or can you just share with us the danger of not resolving conflict in terms of relationships, productivity, and mental health, self harm, and things of that sort? Is there a correlation in your view? And why
Oh,
is it
yes.
important to address conflict?
Um, there's mega billions of dollars that are lost every year because of conflict, unresolved conflict in the workplace,
Mm.
or really, I should say, unaddressed conflict. And it comes out in its toxic workplaces. There's bully bosses. People are leaving workplaces because of their manager more than 70% of the time. That's usually their reason for leaving. And it just, like you said, it seems easier to just let it be. It's difficult to approach someone who may need some training, learning and development, which hasn't happened. And it was funny. During the pandemic, I was asked by someone, why does it seem like there's more conflict now? I said, oh, no, no, there isn't. It's now coming to the surface because everyone
Mm.
got sent, not everyone, many people are working from home. When you're outside that environment, you start to realize, wow, I was really working in this toxic environment that made me, cringe, be tense, nervous every single day. And I'm not going to take it anymore. And then that's why there's been this real, I think, one of the main reasons of this pushback of, am I going to go back to the office or not going to go back to the office? I want to work remotely because I don't want to deal with people. There's almost now like, let me get away from this. And it really comes down to, like you said, people think it's easier not to address the conflict. Well, let me tell you, ignoring conflict, not only does it not go away, it just gets worse. And now you have layers and
Mm.
layers of it. And that's where these toxic organizations have grown. It's not like a year of it, it's years of just trying to shove it under the rug. And it doesn't stay there, it's there. And it comes out in every conversation with people. Uh, if we just absorb the conflict is just part of conversation. It's okay to have different opinions, dare to disagree, talk about it. It can't be this yes, yes kind of thing.
And I'm like that actually. I encourage conversations. Like, oh, okay, let's all get into the room and talk about it. And people go, what is she on about? And yeah, so not many people are comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. And it's not that I
Yes.
like it. I just feel it's such a release as soon as you get to the bottom of the issue. Um, yeah, but not
You
everybody believes or shares the same sentiment, actually.
you
Yeah.
said a key thing. When I figured out that it was okay to be uncomfortable.
Mhm.
It completely changed everything. And I think I realized it not when I was managing a conflict. The first time I had to present, and I am a very shy person. I have now, I know how to manage that. And because it's mostly about managing nerves and being uncomfortable, that I realized that some of those nerves felt just like those same nerves when you're getting excited about going somewhere. And that's where, like, I treat it like, wow, I've got the nerves. Oh, something big is about to happen. Let this be more like invite it versus go, oh, I need to get rid of the nerves. No, like that anxiety doesn't necessarily have to be negative. It can be positive, and just be comfortable that you're going to be uncomfortable and something big is going to happen. And I think that's a
Oh, that's
real
such a beautiful
key point.
share.
I want to talk about
Thank you for
that.
sharing that.
I want to talk about that shy person for a minute. How does this shy person get in front of all these different people in trainings and coaching with all these individuals, and you're naturally shy? And the reason why I'm asking that particular question, because there's so many individuals that are shy, that are not necessarily outgoing, and it's very draining. Like, I'm an introvert by nature. However, I know how to turn it on when I need to, but that's so draining afterwards. I just want to go somewhere, turn some music on, and don't even talk to me for at least 30 minutes. So, I mean, can you give some tips that
Yes.
how you manage that?
So I definitely see shyness and introverted like a little bit separately, even though
Mm.
some combine it. I'm both. And I know exactly how you feel after this past weekend where it was like this reunion of like an event with 100 people. On Monday, I was almost catatonic, just like I had to just sit, no talking to anyone, no TV. I just needed, I know that because being around people, I enjoy it, but it's very draining. For me, that's the real difference between introversion and extroversion, where the extroverts gain energy by being around people. And for me, it's draining. It doesn't mean I don't want to be around. And then the shyness, and I didn't always know what it was, but I was told I was shy. I learned that if I had something to say, or if I knew what I wanted to say, I could just say it. And before, I used to think you had to say the exact right thing, that everyone had to agree with you or like what you had to say. And it was okay because I started to think about what other people said. I didn't always agree, but I listened. And it still didn't come out until I did volunteer work, and I loved it. I was really passionate about what I was doing. And it almost became, I forgot I was shy. Wow, yes, we have to invite those students and their parents. And yep, I'll introduce everyone, the panel. And it almost happened so quick. I was like, oh my God, I just spoke in front of 600 people. How in the world did, and my parents were there. And they asked me, like, so how did you do it? I go, I don't know. Don't ask me because I just did it. And but I realized that but I knew what I was talking about. I was passionate. I wanted to deliver the message. So it was easier. So it was in that case, I didn't have to prepare because I knew what I was doing, but I would use that equation for the next time. Like, hey, you're going to present something, know your material, know what you want to do. If people ask questions and you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, I don't know,
It's
I'll get
okay.
back to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
The
That's,
power of I don't know
oh, it's
helps a
powerful.
lot.
That's really powerful. So I love looking at individuals. You're very active on LinkedIn and have a very engaging audience. And I love looking at individuals' headlines because it just gives you just a little bit about their personality and what they're doing and things like. But there was one phrase that you had in yours that really piqued my attention. I'd love to learn more about it. Is I will get you unstuck. I'd love for you, like, what was the genesis for you putting that out there, and just tell us, what are you going to get us unstuck from?
Conflict. But really through communication, like really changing the mindset and opening it up that we just have to, just like with anything, you pick a goal, and if you believe you're going to get to that goal, you're going to get there. You're going to figure it out, no matter how many challenges are in the way. Well, conflict is that rather than this thing to stop and put in the closet and shut away, it's you're going to get unstuck because I just need you to believe, even though people will walk in the room and go, there is no resolution to this. We've been in conflict for 3 years. This is it. There's nothing to do, but go ahead. You figure it out. I'm like, well, actually, I'm going to help you guys figure it out. And that's the unstuck, like just saying, you know what? We don't know what the solution is right now. I don't know how we're going to get there, but we're going to get there. And if I believe we're going to get there, we're going to keep on finding it because we're going to even say, hey, we didn't get there today. Let's meet again next week rather than saying, you see, there's no solution. So I think it's that to me, people don't always agree with the name positive mindset. They're like, oh, yeah, you think everything's positive. Oh, no, no, no. No, I don't. I just know that no matter how much negative is piled up, I'm going to dig underneath. I'm going to dig even deeper, and there's going to be a positive in there. It might not be easy to find or see, but it's there. And it's the same thing with conflict, where I just need to find that thing where I can equate it, for them, that we're going to get there. And I know that you've talked about it with other guests, and we started to talk about it before we started recording today. Like, what's that one thing that helped you? And that's where, so people say it's a marathon. No, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? It has some meaning. It has a lot of meaning to someone who never knew how to run a city block. Like, I'd be out of breath. And I ended up running a marathon because someone convinced me, like, oh, so you want, this was more than a decade ago. Oh, so you want to lose weight? You're doing some walking. No, 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 you got to start running. I'm like, what? How do you run from being like, I don't know how to run. I'm not an athlete. So they made me sign up for this race, and we swear we will wait at the finish line for you, even if nobody's left. Okay. And we're going to have breakfast after. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds good. So I go, and I am, I very last one to cross the finish line. And, but we go to the diner, and everyone looked at me and goes, you're now a runner. I go, runner? Like, what? You guys finished 2 hours before me. What do you mean a runner? And they're like, oh, and by the way, you're going to run in the New York City Marathon. Are you kidding me? We're going to do there were 5 people. We're going to do this together. And you're going to wait for me at the end of the marathon too, when it takes me 24 hours to do it. Yeah. However long it takes. But to make a long story short, 2 years later, we did it. That I call on that event a lot when I think I can't get through something. I'm like, remember that. Like, it takes training, it takes discipline. Come back the next day when it didn't go well the day before. Just keep at it, because no matter what I do, I'm going to cross that finish line. And it's the same way with conflict. We have to find that one thing that reminds us that if you believe it, it can happen. And I did it a second time too.
How'd
With the
you
marathon.
feel?
Well,
How'd you feel? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was they took they take pictures of you right when you
Yeah,
finish. It is the most ugliest cry picture
that
I
doesn't
have,
matter.
and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The tears
well,
just poured down. So many important things happened to me during that marathon. I got to my father couldn't come out. He wasn't well enough to like come to wave, wave at me when I pass nearby his apartment. So when I was on the 59th Street Bridge, which is what
Mhm.
actually there's still another bridge we have to cross after that, but it's very silent because all the fans are along the road, but they're not allowed onto the bridges. So but I didn't know that. Someone had said it and I just didn't know how like horrible that would feel because the bridge is more than a mile to cross. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. So I pull out my phone and my father like stayed on the phone with me the whole time because I was like, oh my God. And then he heard the cheers like when you get off
Aw.
the bridge. He's like, I think you're fine now. You said if you cross back into Manhattan, you will finish the marathon. I go, like, there's 10 more miles to go. But I got to enjoy, like, he experienced it with me. He said, I really get it. And we were just talking about stories of like how you push through something you think you can't do.
Wow, that's
Conflict.
Oh,
beautiful. One of the things that I got out of that, though, as you're sharing the story, is the power of togetherness. You had some people around you that circled you and said, you know what, we're going to do this together. No matter how long it takes you, that doesn't matter. We're still going to do this together. And it's a powerful
And
thing when you have some amazing people around you.
that's also, I agree. And the cheering on, those other four people, only one of them I knew. The other three I met through her. They were her childhood friends. There was one two of the people were truly runners. Like one had been, a cross country runner in school and all of that. He finished the marathon 2.5 hours before me. And who do you think the first person was I saw, like after that I recognized after I finished? He was just standing there, with those Mylar blankets they give you. He'd been out there. He's like, I'm not leaving our group. We have a picture of the five of us, like we did it. And it was that it didn't matter that all five of us were very
Mhm.
different levels of running and athleticism. It was just somehow we just were like, it's the five of us. And it was funny as the group grew because other people wanted to be in the group. It didn't have that same bond. Like it was still the core five are the five. And whenever I see them, there's like a bond of just knowing that cheering each other and believing in each other and helping each other through the difficult times. Leslie, you're going to do this because there was one race I remember texting someone going, don't wait for me at the end. I'm not going for breakfast. I cannot finish this one. It was our long race before you do the marathon. So it was, I don't know, 18 miles or something. I'm like, I'm just not going to get there. They write back and go, where are you? We're going to come. And they actually had finished and they came and walked with me the rest of the time. It was just, but you need that, even a project, a team, maybe it's all a marathon. Like treat it like we're training for something. We're trying new things. You don't have to know how to do it. We're just going to do it.
your share
The
was
mindset
powerful on
shift.
so many levels, Leslie. It was beautiful, actually. Just there were times that you didn't believe in yourself and other people did. The fact that they stood there
Yeah.
with the blanket reassured the fact that you're worthy of this weight. And just your share, I'm sure it's going to have an impact on so many people. And the power of just being supportive can do miracles, actually. And I know your dad's no longer with us, but just I think just him talking through that bridge is such a special
Yeah.
connection. It's strange though when you allow yourself to step into uncomfortable positions, what beauty can come out of that on so many levels. There's little things that will live with you for your lifetime. So yeah, thank you. I just want to build on that unstuck thing. Going into a conversation where conflict is concerned that so many people avoid actually helps you become unstuck because it's an uncomfortable situation that you've never been in. The next time you're called into it, you have a sense of what to expect. So there's movements
Right.
already.
Mm.
Um,
Exactly. It is. It's just believing, just being curious is one way to start. I
mm,
mean, that's why I do these bite-sized tips they're not
chance.
all going to
Mm,
resonate with each person. But some, when I say
beautiful.
be curious, just be curious, just understand more. Understanding is not agreement. That's also why there's sometimes a real block, because they think, well, if I understand, then they're going to think I agree. Oh, no, no, no. That's not the same word. Understand and agreement are different. You can understand without agreeing. So let's listen. We have to think differently. Isn't that what everything is? Like we all have different
Absolutely.
perspectives.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
Leslie, I know you lecture youngsters at New York University, right? What are you finding is the biggest issues that they're grappling with from a and how do you navigate that space and having the desired impact?
So when I instructed NYU, I would say they'd all like me to call them youngsters. They're not. I'm in the continuing education program mostly. Sometimes even I've taught in a master's program. So it's typically adults who've been not always a long time in the profession, but a huge range of people. And
Mhm.
it is whether young or older, the common factor most often is that they're like, I ended up in this workplace and people are expecting me to manage conflict. I don't even know how to deal with it myself. So they're just not equipped and they're like, well, I don't know what to do. And then when I even uncover it and unwrap it and say it is all about communication, they're like, well, I know how to communicate. I'm like, do you really? So I think that that's the light bulb moment. Doesn't always happen during the course. Sometimes I get the notes afterwards that they realize that I get it now. It was either they realized they weren't listening or that they didn't ask questions. They didn't feel like they had permission to ask more. And they would just go, oh, yes, yes, I know what you want. And they'd walk away and they do a project, they come back, and it's never what the person wanted because they fear. Like there's this obstacle of like, we think we're communicating, we say we're communicating, but we really aren't. And daring to ask questions. It shouldn't be a dare, but it seems to be because when it's not welcomed. And that's what I've changed even in my class where, at the end you used to say like, oh, are there any questions? Well, no, there aren't any. The class is over or ending. We're tired. Um, Figuring out how to say to people, what are your questions? And then just pausing, or giving people other opportunities to ask questions, saying, hey, you might not be wanting to ask it in front of everyone, but I guarantee you the question you have, other people have. So send me a note and I'll just answer it for everyone. Just giving people different options of how to communicate with you. It's not automatic that we all are comfortable talking with each other right away. So I think that's a big piece when they realize that my class is really about communications and it's not about conflict, that you can't even talk about resolving conflict until we address the communication issues.
And yeah, that is a beautiful share though, because we underestimate how powerful communication is. It is through communication we can ch- resolve most of the challenges that we face, whether it's internally, externally, but there needs to be willing parties actually to be open to having those open communications. That's where we fail when we're not willing to go into it freely and openly and not hold your cards close to your chest. This has been amazing. So, this is usually my boyfriend's question, but I'm going to ask it. Leslie, if you had a magic wand and you were given this to have this desired impact in the world, what would it be?
I think the impact, you know what, I'm going to go back to like during the pandemic, finally towards the end of the pandemic, I started that blog. And the reason was is have these tips. I don't like I'm finding people don't respond to the long articles, the long explanations. I want to break it all down into these um, bite-sized pieces. And then I remember when my husband said to me, okay, I built the website. It looks good. Here's your blog. Is anyone going to see it? I said, I don't know. And thus, that's how I ended up getting active on LinkedIn. And I think if that's my impact, that I'm just sharing what I know, because why keep it to myself?
Mm.
And sharing it in a way that I think I'm reaching more people. I don't need to reach the people that are already conflict resolvers. I want to reach the people like every day, and yes, I focus on workplace conflict, but mostly everything I share can be applied to our personal relationships as well. So if anyone just takes one tip away, and that's the impact that it's one person at a time. And if we can just improve the way we hear and talk with each other and get excited to talk with each other, even when we're different, that would be
And
my
that's,
impact.
Oh, that's
oh,
great.
thank you. I love that actually. Did you notice I was relatively quiet because I was listening? This was very
That's that's
informative.
that's rare.
It is rare, but I was listening and it was like, yeah. So Leslie, is there any final comments that you want to land?
Um, just that I love engaging with people. I definitely am going out of my comfort zone during the past 6 months or so. I mentioned like videos that I just love sharing, but finding new ways to share with people. It's not always the written word. Sometimes they have to hear the spoken word, and that's why I dared to do some videos. And I just welcome like questions and opportunities to talk with people, because I think that's how we're all going to grow. I learn something
Absolutely.
new every time I talk to someone.
Leslie, thank you. And it's so funny because I've had someone tell me that I need to do more videos of me talking on LinkedIn. And I said, absolutely not. I prefer to be behind the scenes. Let me just do the typed word. That's about it. So I commend
Me
you
too.
for your spoken word out there, because a few of us just prefer not to be in front of the camera if we can help it. But how do the people find you? Whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, your blog, just tell the people how they find you.
Sure. LinkedIn, Leslie Nydick. Same thing on YouTube. It's the Conflict Strategist, all just as one word. And then my website, theconflictstrategist.com, and all of that. And then, of course, my contact information is in each of those places. And I just welcome the engagement. Like you said on LinkedIn, I love engaging in the comments. Maybe I obsess a little too much. Like I just make sure I hit every comment because it's a conversation. And for those that, that's how I started on LinkedIn, commenting on other people's posts. And then I realized I could start posting. Uh, and it just invites a conversation or not. And then I go on other people's posts and comment. So, and then the same thing, I've just started on YouTube, but I just want you to know, you are already recording videos. We're on one now. That's how I started my first video. Someone said, what do you mean you won't go on video? You were on a live event the other day. I go, well, that's not recording a video. They're like, yes, it is. So
This is a
you have
conversation, so
clips,
it's so
right?
this is easy to do actually. Just standing it. No, it's not for me. Um,
Just take a clip and put it on LinkedIn.
it's just
Love
been
it.
phenomenal actually having you and your
Yes.
insights and your share. And conflict is such a it's a conversation and it's a feeling that
Affects,
each of us go through
affects
actually. So
everybody everywhere.
it does actually. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your share today. It's been I enjoyed it thoroughly actually.
I
Grateful
have
for your
to.
time. Lots of love. Just wishing you only the best. And to people out
Thank
there,
you.
just thank you for coming out and listening to us. And yeah, have a great day. Lots of love and
Take
light.
take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Have a
Thank
great one.
thank you.